Good evening and welcome to our Facilities Committee meeting at this time. Will we now pause for a moment of meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we will now call our facilities meeting to order. I want to say thank you to all of the committee members who showed up tonight. And thank you to the community who's joining us as well. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. All persons wishing to attend the meeting virtually may do so via YouTube Sumter School District Board Meeting and Sumter School District's Facebook page. However, in compliance with the recent public health orders, no members from the public will be able to attend the meeting in person. Tonight, joining us on our committee for the Facilities Committee meeting, we have myself, Sean T. Reagan, as the chairperson of the Facilities Committee and then we have Dr. J. Frank Baker, who is present with us tonight, Mr. Matthew McLeod, and Ms. Robin D. Mills. Also joining us is our superintendent, Dr. Martin Knox, as well as Mr. Myers, our executive director of operations. And Ms. Hanson is joining us as well, our administrative manager. At this time, we will move to our agenda and we'll go to item 1.2, open remarks. Let me say this before we move forward with the agenda to approve it. I would like to say to the committee members tonight, if we can, I know we've been tasked with picking recommendation for this committee. So I'm asking that all of us submit that via email to either myself or Ms. Hanson by March the 5th, which is Friday at 3 p.m. If we can get that in as soon as possible, okay?
And this is a public member?
Yes, ma'am. All right, let us move forward if we don't have any questions about that. All right. We're now down to 2.1 on the agenda, and that's the approval of the agenda. And we could do this with consent approval, correct? All right. If there's no objections, the agenda will stand approved. Hearing none, the agenda now stands approved. Item 3.1. Building and classroom sanitization, and air quality update at this time. I believe the last time we had a facilities committee meeting, this was on the agenda as well. So tonight we're giving an update and a follow-up. So I yield to the superintendent at this time.
So thank you, Chairman Reagan, Dr. Baker, Ms. Mills and Mr. McLeod. As we've continued to have conversation as it pertains to the sanitization and the air quality of our schools, during the last full board meeting, we had a presentation conducted by an external agency and company. The conversation began in here about ensuring that the air quality in our schools was adequate and making sure that our children and our staff were in an environment where they were not transmitting the virus repeatedly and actually transferring the virus and causing us to have to quarantine or students and teachers catching the virus. The conversation began here where we talked about the dehumidifiers, the ionization machines, as well as the air filters, the types that we've used. As a result of that initial conversation regarding the tools that would help cleanse the air, I, along with Mr. Myers and Mr. Chan, conducted phone conferences with several individuals around the nation who lead school districts as well as their operations staff. What was yielded from those conversations is that many of the school districts were using the same air filters that Sumter School District was using, because that was the standard operating procedure, and that was the MERV 8. Continuing to conduct investigation, we knew that MERV 13 filters were the best filters to use. However, with the aging of our HVAC units, if we were to use the MERV 13s, we knew that it would cause damage in the long run for our units. We have increased the usage from MERV 8 to MERV 10 without that impact occurring, but they're still on the table, the conversations as to what we would like to do in terms of moving forward with either the ionizers, the dehumidifiers, and or the changing of the air filters. Again, we've already changed the air filters, and so we had a study conducted where we selected several schools throughout our district, and we put those varying tools in our schools for the air quality test to be conducted. Again, this was conducted by an external agency. And so because we did not get into a great deal of discussion, Mr. Myers is going to repeat that information that was shared by the company that conducted the air quality assessment, because there was marginal change between the three items that were utilized. And so I see some nods of the heads because I think we remembered, but I just wanted to make sure that we were doing the best we can to ensure the safety of our students and our staff in our buildings. And then what recommendation are we going to take back to the full board? Do we remain where we are in terms of using the MERV 10s and getting the good ratings that we receive, or do we add another component? And so, Mr. Myers, I probably stepped on your toes a little bit, so I apologize. I never do that, but tonight I did. But if you can go ahead and share the numbers and the information that you have regarding that and moving forward.
Thank you, and good evening. Good evening. It's okay to step on the toes. Always good information. I do want to start with the study that was done. As Dr. Martin Knox had indicated, we did make our adjustment from the MERV 8 to the MERV 10, and all of our schools are now using the MERV 10s. The study that was done, we selected 3 schools and 3 different classrooms in each school, and we made sure that there was an ionizer placed on the units, and we made sure that there were air purifiers and the MERV 10s that were in there. There was a pre-study done. Those results were given, and of course, with the pre-study itself, with the pre-test itself, the counts were much higher. The marginal changes between the 3 gave us the impression that we're doing pretty well with the filters that we're using. We did have you had some up and down counts with the ionizer versus the air purifier, but the filter was working just as well. So we did a study with the mold spores, and our counts for the ionizer appeared to be somewhat higher, but then again, there was no reduction with that of the filter. It held its own. When we went to the particulates that were in the air, all of the numbers came out right about the same. They averaged out about the same. Some were between the average of about 50% up to 99%. So they measured out about the same. When we went to the viral bacterial results, they all came out right around 72% to 89%. So they balanced themselves out once again. And with the last test that was done, the fungal results, we now have the filters that worked with a 73% average versus the ionizer that came out around 60% once you average those out. So once we looked at the average of all of those, the marginal differences did not indicate that one had an advantage over the other. I think that would be something that someone might say, well, I would prefer this or I would prefer the other, but the marginal differences have not given us leadway to say that we need to go with this one or we need to go with that one. We know that the filters themselves have been working based off the change from the 8 to the 10. So we have seen that difference, and we have them in all of our schools now, so it has been working.
And so I stand to be corrected. I was calling them dehumidifiers and no one corrected me. While I was stepping on toes, I should use the right terminology, the air purifiers. We do know that there have been studies that are conducted and have been conducted as many of our prison systems are now moving to the ionizers, I believe, to keep the prisons safe for our community members. And so I just wanted to bring back to this table for us to have open discussion about that and the recommendation moving forward with the board. Now, we are planning, of course, to receive fundings through ESSER, the ESSER funds from the CARES funds, and those funds can be utilized for facility upgrades as it relates to coronavirus. And so it is our intent to upgrade our systems, as many of them need to be replaced, but we also don't want to cross over into the work that has been conducted by one of the presentations again tonight. So while we're continuing to make sure we're able to safeguard the instructional environment, we need to make sure that we are responsive in a fiscally prudent manner and making sure we utilize the funds for the better system or approach to air quality in our schools.
Thanks. Question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dr.
Mr. Myers, when you looked at cost, can you give us an idea if we go with filters versus ionizers or whatever?
Yes, sir.
We'd have an idea of exactly how much difference we're talking about in monies with the different components.
When we're talking about the ionizer, you're averaging about 300 to 50, 60, maybe 375 per unit. You talk about the air purifier, maybe 325 up to about $340. With our filters, they vary because you may have some that are used in different types of units. So your cost may be from $375 up to about $8. So it varies that much. So in doing that with the ionizer itself, we would average out about $430,000 in about, plus or minus. And I think Ms. Miller, would you have those figures for us?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. Can you repeat the question? Was it how much the
Yes.
filters were?
Well, we've talked about all three of the approaches, and I know we've also talked about the costs. And the question was, do you have those costs in front of you, or the approximate cost for each one of the approaches?
I believe that was in one of our presentations in the fall. I can take a few minutes and try to pull it up.
Please.
You can move on to the next thing, and I'll let you know once I have it.
Sure. And so we have been looking at the cost analysis. And so there were plus and deltas for the use of each one. Like I said, the increase in the size of the air filters would do more damage in the long run to the HVAC units. And looking at the purifiers and ionizers, I know that there's research out there that talks about the ozone being impacted by its use. And then the other one, it had to do with the electrical use if they were placed on the units. And do you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit better than I can?
If we're looking at attaching the ionizer to the unit itself, there have been some studies that have indicated that, well, basically any type of unit that you're using has some type of emission of ozone. From the ones that we've tested, the results came back with maybe 0.03 versus 0.05. When we take a look at what's within a computer or medical equipment, you still have the same type of emissions. And with cell phones, you still have emissions of it as well. So 0.03 to 0.05, somewhere in there with the units that we were using based off the study that we've done and the information we received from that manufacturer.
And we've already invested in the upgrade to the filters, correct?
Yes.
So that'd be no additional cost and no additional benefit really from doing any other systems, from what it sounds like.
That is correct. And we made that adjustment because we wanted to see the difference within it, and it has made a difference.
Right.
And so we went from the 8 to the 10, and it has been working very well.
Going from the 8 to the 10 was a recommendation from the study that we did, or?
No, it evolved as a result of the conversations.
Right.
As you all know, I don't hesitate picking up the phone and calling others if I don't know, and I don't know. So I connected Mr. Myers with individuals who lead the work in their districts, and I also spoke with the superintendents who put me in connection with some other individuals. And when we read their reports or when we talked to them, they all said the same thing, that they were still using their MERV 8s, but they were doing different things, like keeping the windows open so that the fresh air would circulate. I think we found one school district, we found one school district in another state where they had begun to use, which one was it, the one that goes on the unit? Which one is that? The outside. The ionizer,
Yes.
and they saw that there was an increase in the way in which the unit was working, and it was intensifying the work because it was pulling, and they said it has to run all night long, and it's continuous even through the weekend.
So your energy would go.
Your energy would go up, and then we're doing the energy study without having that unit in there, so it's kind of counterproductive to say, let's take the results from the train component, and now let's put this on, because then there's no cost savings. And so the recommendation, actually one of them actually had given me a copy of a paper that I read, just to make sure that, again, we were doing what's best for our children. And so, you know, the upgrades in the filter, it was not a recommendation from the study, it was something that we did based on dialogue with others who are doing this work.
Right.
And there's a school district in South Carolina that also changed their filters just to go up to 10s. But very few were using 13s because their HVAC units don't accommodate. But the ones who do, that's what they use in their newer models.
So basically from the study that was done, I just have one more question for clarification. Our results from that came back and said that we were in good shape as a district, as a whole. Okay.
Yeah, actually, if you go back and look at the presentation, she actually gave us a compliment in terms of building cleanliness, which also contributes to the air. And she said again, that as many studies as she's done, we do a good job of keeping the air clean and the buildings clean. We can always improve though.
That's right.
I agree.
Ms. Miller, do you have those numbers yet?
I do. It looks like the bipolar ionization, when we presented in the fall, was an estimate of $453,000. The air purification was estimated to be $414,000. And then for the filters, we just have different prices per filter. The 8 MERV was $5 each, the MERV 11 was $13 each, and a MERV 13 was $22 each, just to give you the breakout of the price difference between filters.
But we put the MERV 10 on.
The 10,
Yes.
that's correct. The 10 and the 11 run about the same price, in the same price range.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Any further questions at this time? All right, we will now move forward to 3.2, Crosswell Park Early Childhood Center Building Progress I guess we can just have a discussion and get an update from that as well. And I'm not sure if we're gonna talk about programs into that, but my suggestion is that we just center around the building aspect of it, okay?
So as we talk about the Sumter Academy for Support and Intervention, you know, the staff has been utilized in different capacities since we are hybrid in our approach, but the work in the building is continuous. And I just want to take this time to thank our Principal Boone, and his staff for continuing to navigate around the construction. If you haven't been around the building, I encourage you to, because it's just amazing watching the building evolve. We've been there a couple of times and we've made adjustments, and so Mr. Myers can give us an update in terms of where we are in terms of the progress around the facility.
Okay. We've been noticing the various adjustments that they've made. Phase 1, well, the entire project is right about 70% complete, and then they've now gone on to phase 2. Phase 1 took on relocating and changing the restroom systems in several rooms in one part of the building, and they have made those adjustments, changing out restrooms in the hallways, making sure that they are up to code, and they have done that successfully. And now they have moved to phase 2, where they have begun to take out certain sections to create a unified restroom, one for boys, one for girls, and they've begun to do that, and they've erected a wall where it would separate the work that they're doing, and the staff has now moved. We are now into an area where they have started to put up the storefront windows in the main office, the receiving office. They've done the storefront windows in the classrooms where they've been renovating the restrooms, and they have been making sure that all of the different things are being done. They've kept close contact with Mr. Boone. He's been with them as they've been doing the work. I've visited numerous times just to make sure that they are on point. I just spoke with one of the contractors today, and the work that they're doing is saying that they are on target to complete the entire process by April 7th. So,
You said April 7th?
April 7th. 7th, yes. That's a projected date, and the expectation, without any other delays or anything like that. They have had some power failure at one time, but that didn't throw them off too much. They worked to do what they needed to do, but they are on target to finish by that time. And that's where we are.
Did you guys happen to do a before and after, like a picture book kind of thing? That'd be a nice thing to present to them.
There were pictures. I just have to track down and see if Mr. Boone or whomever may have those, but there were some pictures there. Yes.
At this time, we'll take questions from our committee, so if you have any questions, you can just ask and I'll call upon you so you can speak. Ms. McLeod?
We probably discussed this when we took the tour a few months ago. The bathrooms that were in the classrooms,
Yes.
are they just being covered so they're not being used, or are they being adjusted for
all of the
larger people, or are they
the smaller commode areas,
right?
they have erected a cover
Okay.
that's mounted on top of them.
Okay.
And they've covered any other items that may have been down to the side. They boxed it in, but they covered it over, and you have to take more than one person to get it off, so no one can really go and take it off. But
That's
all of those rooms.
Well, what I was getting at was, I would hate for us to take all that out and redo something,
Right,
and then,
yes.
3 years from now, we have to turn around and redo it again.
That's right.
That's good.
right. Yes,
So
sir.
that was a good question, and thank you, Mr. McLeod. When we walked the facility several times just to make sure that the building was versatile because of its use, and remember, we plan to do summer programs for our children there. If we were to take those restrooms or those commodes, as they're referred to, out of the classrooms, putting them back in would be costly. And so knowing that we were going to utilize them, we worked very closely with the architect and the contractors to see if we could preserve them,
Yeah.
but to also make sure they're safe. So as Mr. Myers just shared the coverings on, a child is not just going to be able to take the cover off.
So it covers that whole little area right
That
there.
whole area.
Okay, good.
And what I would like is, when the project is complete, that we take a walk through the building just so we can see
Mhm.
the work that's been done, particularly those who are familiar with what it looked like after we went through the tour.
Right.
Because there's gonna be some good work happening there.
Good.
Any other questions? Dr. Baker?
Yeah.
I do have one.
Okay, go ahead.
The playground equipment, it's gonna stay there for like the summer program, I assume? Okay.
Yes, sir, and we also wanted to add, to the outside facilities. We haven't crossed that bridge yet, but for our students who are there, I do believe it's important that they have the opportunity to, exert their energy and in a positive way, such as with basketball or just the picnic area for them. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but yes, that equipment will remain. There was no need for us to take that equipment out because it's fairly new,
Right.
and it didn't seem to be beneficial in terms of the costs and the expenditures, to remove it.
I agree.
All right, thank you. We're now down to item 3.3, review of energy saving program.
And so at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Anderson Company. We invited Mr. Anderson to come this evening because there are several questions that we had as a collective from Mr. Anderson. Who better to answer them than Mr. Anderson and his team? So he's listening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you barely.
Oh, sorry, Rich waved. We have you here, Mr. Anderson, again. Thank you for being here. I just wanted to provide our committee the opportunity to ask questions regarding the train project and where we are, and any other questions they may have of you. But if you could just recap some of the information that you shared with us in terms of the project itself, and then I guess it will jog some of the committee members' thinking, and they will pose questions of you if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with me tonight. I will share my screen if that's okay, and there we go. And then we can, I guess Amy's controlling this, because I'm not. My computer's haunted. Yeah, I'll just go through the presentation we did to the board on February and answer any questions. If you go to the next slide, please. You know, this is the process that we've utilized this slide through the entire process, basically indicating where we began all the way back in May of 2019 and what it's taken to get here through not just the process itself, but throwing the COVID on top of it as well. But you know, once you gave the commitment to move forward with a letter to proceed, we collected some utility data, did walkthroughs to do a preliminary analysis for the district. Being somewhat of a different process that you may be accustomed to, we would walk you through this in a way that provides as much information through each step so that you completely understand and process moving forward. And through that preliminary data, the school district solicited RFQs, and Train was selected as your provider for an energy project through that RFQ. And next, we provided a letter of commitment that allowed us to go do our final cost and scope to develop the project in full details with the costing and those kind of things. And the only next step would be to secure the financing. But through this letter of commitment, that's where basically the decision was made to move forward with an energy saving performance contract by the board and the administration. And like I said, we've worked with the facilities team and folks within each one of the facilities as we walk the buildings, looking at every light fixture and things of that nature to determine the best solution for Sumter School District. So with that being said, the next steps, as you can see there in red, are just to do an RFQ for financing and then move forward with the contracts and we begin making improvements. And the last step there would be after the project is totally complete and the district has signed off and verified that all the work is complete, and we, a year later, after 1 year after the completion of the project, we provide a measurement verification report. So next slide. You know, the real benefits that are associated with these projects was, you know, once we do our initial presentation, sometimes, especially if the time is taken to get through this, it's somewhat forgotten. So I just want to remind everyone the fact that this type of a program improves the learning environment. It does reduce your energy and operational costs. It upgrades inefficient equipment and some equipment that's at the end of its life. And it's a proactive approach to help with the deferred maintenance within the school districts. And it allows you to manage a single source being trained. We will manage the entire project for you. And the project is guaranteed energy savings and operational savings. So the energy conservation measures, if we go to the next slide, that were developed, and actually these were basically communicated early on as we completed energy projects for many, many years. So being familiar with the operation of a school building as well as other facilities that we work in, these are what we call typical energy conservation measures. There's nothing that's out there that's really out of the box, if you will. So I'm just going to run through them real quickly. It's a LED lighting retrofit in the schools. That's obviously changing out to the most efficient lighting that's on the market today. Building controls upgrade and recommissioning. Upgrading the two different platforms that you have in your buildings for building controls that operate the systems to the latest software and in some cases hardware, and then recommissioning those and reprogramming those to bring efficiency to the schools. Building envelope improvements. You know, when the building is basically built, you build the structure, you windows and doors, and it's basically a secure, tight facility, right? And over time, with the windows and doors, and even the building itself can settle, and there's cracks and things around the door, like the insulation and things of that nature that keep infiltration or exfiltration, depending on the positive airflow in the building, that can affect the environment. And what we've done is taken a look at all this along with above the ceilings, where some insulation will be put in and included as well in the areas that need insulation. And it just brings the building back to an airtight environment, if you will. So all the things that we're doing from lighting and things of that nature, when you seal the building for the most part, then that keeps the energy costs down, and we're not losing air conditioning inside the building from these areas that could be leaking air. And then high efficiency transformers. A pretty simple energy conservation measure. The transformers you have right now are 20 plus years old. They're older equipment that put off also a lot of heat. Not only are they more inefficient than the transformers today, but they put off a lot of heat. So sometimes in the space where they're located, it can become very hot. And some spaces even had a little air conditioning unit to keep it cool in those areas. But these transformers, basically, where the voltage comes into the building, if it higher voltage, it needs to be stepped down for all the equipment in the building as well as the nature. And these transformers do that. They're running 24/7. They're important and critical to a school because if a transformer goes out, you either lose part of your building, half your building, depending on how many transformers and which one goes out, what part of the building controls. You could lose that school electricity for that part of the school. So again, we're bringing some high efficiency transformers in to replace those, and we'll see environment cooler in those areas, as well as more updated and resilient transformer for that. And then the last one is HVAC upgrades. It has the larger, the longer payback period when it comes to energy savings, but it's obviously in school buildings the most needed with the deferred maintenance situation that the municipal districts face. So by doing the other energy conservation measures, which have more energy savings or a quicker payback per se, it helps us to be able to look at upgrading and replacing some of the HVAC systems. So that's the energy conservation measures that we've developed for the project. And if anybody, I guess I should, any questions right now, I can go ahead and answer any questions if anybody has any on the energy conservation measures.
Any questions at this time from the committee?
I have one question. Did you take a holistic approach when looking at the various buildings and try to do as much to one building versus piecemealing it across the enterprise? What I mean is if you're responsible for the energy savings and the energy in that entire facility, it's easier, I guess, to do your cost savings. So instead of piecemealing, like if you only did LED lights in one building, and then in another building you did the envelope LED lights and HVAC. So I'm just curious, what was your approach to what you picked and chose?
Yes, the way the program is designed is the energy savings need and operational savings pay for the program. So our approach is to find the things that provide maybe not the most quantity of energy savings, but compared to the cost, the quickest payback. So like LED lighting in some cases can have a 5-year payback, and HVAC, for instance, may have a 25-year payback. But by combining all of these energy conservations together, that gives us, what you'll see on the next slide, it gives you the payback over a certain term that will be looked to finance the project. So as easy as it may be to go in and see many HVAC, much of the HVAC equipment and units that may need to be replaced, that has a longer payback, and that would be more of a capital project. That's why we have to go in and approach this from an energy savings, return on investment or payback standpoint, based on the performance contracting law that's in South Carolina. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I have another question too.
Go ahead.
So for all of the equipment that you replace, what is your responsibility for the life of the this is a 20-year contract, is that correct?
We're showing a 20-year cash flow. Obviously, that's up to the district and how they want to finance or pay for the project, but we're showing this as a program that pays for itself over 20 years. It does allow more of the HVAC work to get done because of the term. But so I think your question was, how do we support like the HVAC on the project that we will replace?
Or any of the equipment that, so your cost savings are based on the improvements that you do, the LED lighting you put in, the envelope work that you do, the insulation, the sealing around the windows, the new HVACs. If during that 20-year period, any of that equipment fails, who pays to replace it?
Well, there's multiple ways to look at this, obviously. And right now, the way it's set up, there are the warranties associated with each one of the energy conservation measures, such as the transformers. They have a 20-year warranty on them. The LED lights have a 10-year warranty. HVAC and things of that nature will have a 1-year warranty on it, but the compressors, we've got a 5-year warranty on those. But if those would fail, and the compressor fail in year 6 or 7, the way we are addressing it now would be the school district's responsibility to take care of. We can provide what I'll call service agreements to maintain that equipment for the term of the contract. That's an option. What we found is typically, and currently right now, before this project is done, the district handles most of the maintenance. They may sub out some of that due to maybe a special project or a lack of manpower or something of that nature. But right now, the district handles most of the maintenance of the HVAC equipment. So whatever they want us to support them with, we will support them with. But the warranty is where our responsibility would stop on this particular type of project. But we can, again, as I mentioned, we can offer up extended warranties or a longer service type associated with this type of a project. And, you know, I think you may be thinking about federal projects, Mrs. Mills, and federal projects typically mandate that a maintenance and operations program is associated with the performance contracts on federal projects. State of South Carolina is totally flexible, and it's totally up to what the district would want me to provide and support them.
So during the life of your contract, you are claiming savings over a period of time. If a system fails and say the school district decides for whatever reason not to replace that, whether it's lighting or something else that you have put in, because the school district is responsible if it's not under warranty to keep that up, to replace it if it fails during this period. How do you adjust if for whatever reason it could be a failure that's not replaced or changed, or say a building is modified and equipment is changed? How do you deal with adjusting cost savings that changes over the period of this time?
Well, you know, to answer the building closes down, obviously that building, depending on what the school district does with it, that building would just not be a part of the energy guarantee anymore. We would just, you know, it's not owned, it's not being operated. They may even still sell that. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. As far as adjusting things like temperature or
can you hold on just a sec? So sometimes it's not straightforward because you have to have the ability. In federal contracts, my experience has been that you all, depending on how the contract is written, can claim those savings based on the baseline cost savings, regardless of whether they are changed in the future. So I just want to make sure from the school districts for this contract is that if there is a change in the future during the life of this program, the contract has the ability to be modified to adjust those cost savings.
Yes, it does. And that's whether you close a building, whether you add on to a building, those type of things will be adjusted. It's a matter of communicating, and when we're providing the measurement verification reports, that type of information is on a continual basis that we communicate with the district so we can make those adjustments. But it is capable of being adjusted. That's in our contract language.
Okay, that's good. I'm sorry, one last question. So to establish the cost savings, which is the crux of this whole arrangement, explain how you come up with those savings. Is it based on total energy to the facility, or is it based on manufacturer's data? For example, when you put in LED lights, is it based on a formula, or is it based on total, when you measure after your equipment's installed, what the kilowatt draw was on that building, and then a month later after it's installed, what it is then?
Yeah, actually, we look at that from, for example, lighting, as you mentioned, we could measure a room before our installation or a fixture, however it needs to be done. But then we measure it afterwards as well. We don't measure, well, we can measure, but we typically just utilize by EGCM, the International Performance Measurement Verification Protocol that basically all energy projects are measured by. It's the standard. and that would be how we would do our energy measurement verification as well. But before we even did that, to come up with our energy savings, we measured and put data loggers and things of that nature on equipment to get run times, to understand how much equipment is being run, how much lights are on, and things of that nature, so that we have that information to compare to what we will put in when it comes to like LED lights and things of that nature. So we would measure it before, and then we would measure it afterwards, and that's how our calculations are determined.
So you never measure actual utility cost, meaning if you compare the month's bill that you had prior to your program, and then after you've made the changes, you're not doing any verification based on actual utility billing.
Well, the measurement will be for on specific ECMs. Like, for example, if we do a building that we only do transformers, controls, and envelope and lighting, that could be typically only 20% of the utility costs. So we're not affecting the HVAC, which is, and other things which are a big part of the utility cost. So it may not be necessary to measure the actual building after that, or the utility bill per se.
But to truly verify, so say you've determined that a building's energy draw, 20% is from the lighting, and you change the lighting, and you change that factor, it should be reflected in your overall cost of paying the utility bill, correct?
Yes. But there's 80% of that bill that's not reflected in anything that we've done in the building that could be a variable as well, depending on different things like weather and runtime and stuff of that nature.
So you never actually verify it by your true cost of paying the utility bill? Meaning your cost for your utility should go down.
Yes, your costs should go down, but then, like I say, the 80% could go up.
Yes, it could.
Right?
It's hard to verify.
It's challenging, but something like lighting and even transformers and those things are very, are pretty much, a light fixture uses this many kilowatts. We switch to LED, it uses this many kilowatts, and the calculation is, it's fairly simple, if you would, and those are pretty straightforward based on that type of information. We can provide a utility bill analysis of every school building, but again, our experience and what other schools, they don't want to put the money in that versus maybe putting it in some other area of their buildings, because it is costly to take every school building and collect every monthly bill and run a whole building verification on that particular project. And that's just what we found in the past, but it is something that we can do should the district want to do that.
Well, I'm just trying to ensure that for whoever's going to do this verification and oversight for this project, that they have a good way to measure the value of this. So if you are doing cost savings and you have a baseline cost savings, that is basically your justification for doing a contract like this. So you're saying that over the life of this contract, you're gonna save the district in utility cost, okay? So how do they accurately oversee those cost savings?
Well, again, that's where we're not going to just do these measurements, verifications by ourselves. We will do that with someone designated by the district to be with us to verify this information.
And Mr. Anderson, may I add a piece to Ms. Mills' question? When we first started having the discussion, didn't you present an analysis of each one of the districts' in their costs for electrical usage for a certain time period, like quarterly. Do you remember having a chart up that did that?
I think what we did was, did collect the energy analysis, or we actually collected 3 years of energy bills to analyze this information. But I don't think we looked at it quarterly per se. I think all we did from the preliminary, I'm going to give you, what we did is we estimated what we thought based on your cost per square foot and what we've been able to achieve on other projects. And that's what we've been able to determine from a preliminary standpoint. We gave you a range of where we felt like the project would be based on something like 15% energy savings versus 25% energy savings, which we felt like we could achieve those from a preliminary standpoint. And then once we got into the buildings and started looking at things and evaluating the rate structures and things of that nature, that's what we did in our detailed study, and that's where we came up with this current project and the real savings versus estimated savings based on our history and knowledge of projects in the past. That answer your question?
It did. Yeah, I was just saying quarterly. I just remember seeing an analysis that was put up similar to the cash flow summary, but it was of school districts and their utility bill and what they actually, and it was a breakdown also of our schools. Because, Ms. Miller, do you remember what I'm talking about? Because
Actually, your memory is spectacular, Dr. Martin Knox. It was in our May 11th, 2020 meeting. There was a presentation from October 2019, and there is a slide in there that had like Anderson School District 4 was at the top of it, and it showed the different breakouts, and then it went on to our utility by school.
Okay, I'm sorry, that actually is information, yes, I remember that actually came from the state. And all school districts in South Carolina have to submit their utility data here to the state energy office, and they provide that information. So yes, that came from the state, and it ranks all the school districts in the state on their utility costs. So yes,
and
I misunderstood you. I apologize.
that's okay. You know, I have those moments sometimes. But I just wanted to Ms. Mills' point, if we needed to measure, we would have that data, just as this was accessible to us, that we can use that over time to be able to measure its effectiveness of the work that we're planning to embark upon. I just knew that similar to, was that what you were talking about?
Yeah, well, it's important for us to realize that energy usage does not equate. What I was trying to get to make a point of is that your utility bills may or may not go down. So, because the rates change, and you cannot control those utilities companies' charges. So what we really should be basing it on is that energy usage dropping, and not necessarily the utility bills, but you could in your utility bill see what the draw is. So say one building used, at beginning 200 kilowatts, and afterwards they used 150 kilowatts. I'm just making up numbers. So you should be able to do that verification, but the cost may not change because is the utility company Black River or Duke here? Oh, it's all over. So it varies. It's between Duke and Black River, is that right?
Yeah.
So it just depends on what their rate structure is, because regardless of the energy savings, if their rates go up, you're not going to save the money.
And one of the things I can say as a result of that data, we actually had a conversation with our principals, just a reminder, like when classrooms are not in usage, turn off the lights, over the weekends, turn off the lights. There were certain things that we did with the air utilization. Turn off the air at the end of the day, and if you know what I'm talking about. Okay,
Right.
So, they're just different things and habits and behaviors that we have that could assist with that as well. But I knew that there was a rating chart that showed, I think Sumter was kind of in the middle of most of the districts in terms of our expenditures when it came down to the utilities bill.
In 2019, you were 29th out of 80 school
Those
districts.
was in the middle.
So not too bad. Ms. Mills, to get back to your comment there, you're right. If the utility costs go up, that 80% or whatever else is using utilities that we aren't affecting, but the 20%, the lighting, you'll actually see more savings, just like you'll see more expenditures on the area of HVAC that we're not affecting. So if we're saving 200 kilowatts by doing the lighting, and your utility rate is this amount, and it goes up, and that savings will go up a little bit as well. But it's only about 20% of the total utility bill. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, any further questions from the committee at this time? Mr. McLeod?
No, sir.
Dr. Baker?
No, sir.
All right.
So thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, team. This concludes the review of this facilities portion of the agenda.
All right, we're now down to 4.1, recommendations to the full board. So we can chime in if we have any recommendations at this time, and we can notate them and get them to the full board. Any recommendations from this committee concerning any of the items so that we can take it back to the full board? Dr. Baker.
I feel we need to move forward with the filter approach rather than the air purifier or the ionization. Based on the study, and that study was shared at a previous board meeting, it seems like we're getting very, very good results from that. And it certainly is much more economical in terms of dollars being spent. So I think that's one thing that the committee needs to
Yeah, I agree with that.
carry back.
I agree, and you know, kudos to the administrative team for doing the research, because you just stated that we went from an 8 to a what, 10?
Yeah.
10 now, and then stepping out and doing the actually getting the actual study done. I think that was good of the administrative team, and so we can know where we currently stand and to know that we're doing a good job right now in terms of what we're discussing. I do agree with that recommendation from Dr. Baker, so I have notated that. Any other recommendations at this time?
And I guess this is more for clarification, maybe to lead into a recommendation. Based on the information that Mr. Anderson has gone back over tonight, we have had that presented as a board. So our next step would be to look at the funding for this. So I feel that obviously that has to come next. So I don't know whether that really needs to be a recommendation. That might be a no-brainer, but I do think that's the direction we need to be moving in next, or must move in next, so to speak.
Is there a time frame for which we need to get this contract to them so that they can start the project? Or it's up
So
to
the
you?
train work wouldn't be a contract. The next step, as Dr. Baker mentioned, would be getting the funding. And so we have it allocated to bring that back for the next board meeting so that we can still have the opportunity to present questions to Mr. Anderson and his team. But the next step is the funding of the work.
Okay,
Go ahead.
are you pursuing other periods of performance other than the 20? Is that what part of the look is gonna be?
Yes, ma'am. And again, lessons learned from other districts, right? Before I put us in a space where we won't yield benefits and we're doing more harm than good, but having conversations with my thought partners and other colleagues around this work. This is not unusual for districts. And so, I think that it will assist us with moving in the direction of making sure, one, that we're not wasting funds and we're able to continue to move in the direction of cost savings. So, yes, ma'am.
All right, any other recommendations? If not, we'll move to item number 5.1, approval of minutes from the September 21st, 2020 meeting. With no objections, the minutes will stand approved at this time. Hearing no objections, the minutes from the September 21st meeting will stand approved. Item number 6, closing remarks. Again, thank you to the committee members for showing up tonight. Thank you, Mr. Myers, and the other administrative team members as well. I don't see him anymore. Well, thank you anyway. And to our superintendent, thank you as well. I think we had a productive meeting. What do you think, Dr. Baker?
Very good.
All right.
Very good.
Okay, so at this time, we're now down to the closing. Drive safe. Thank you, community, for watching tonight. And at this time, 7:00 p.m., 1 hour. This meeting now stands adjourned.
Excellent meeting.